Hold still, my lady. I have you now.
She was trapped in the rosebush. Thorns tearing through her silk gown, blood streaking her wrist, her breath caught in her throat. Then a shadow fell over her. "Hold still, my lady," the Duke whispered, kneeling close. "I have you now." But Lady Endellion's tears weren't from the pain. They were from guilt, because the rosebush wasn't an accident. It was a trap, and the Duke, kneeling so tenderly to save her, was never meant to walk out of that garden alive. So who wanted him dead? And why did her heart shatter the moment he smiled at her? Hit that subscribe button now, because what happened next will leave you breathless. The thorns bit deeper the longer she stayed, and yet Lady Endellion could not bring herself to move, not because of the pain, not because of the blood threading down her wrist in slow, lazy ribbons, but because the man kneeling before her was looking at her the way no man ever had. And she knew with a sickening certainty that he was going to die because of her. "Easy now," the Duke murmured. His fingers brushed the wild rose stem just above her shoulder. "Careful as a man handling glass. You've gone and tangled yourself in the worst of them. These are the old roots, stubborn things. I am sorry, Your Grace." Her voice came out smaller than she meant it to. "I did not see the path bend. Few do. My mother planted these the year I was born," she said. "A garden ought to fight back a little." He smiled, and it ruined her. "Hold your breath for me. This one is going to sting." She held her breath. He worked the thorn from the inside of her elbow with a touch so gentle she nearly wept. 3 days ago she had stood in a candle-lit drawing room and sworn to a man with cold grey eyes that she would lead the Duke of Wenmere into this garden at the strike of 2. 3 days ago she had told herself she had no choice. She still had no choice. Her brother's life was the price, and her brother was all she had left in the world. But 3 days ago she had not known. The Duke had a dimple on the left side of his mouth. She had not known his hands would shake when he saw her bleeding. "There," he said softly, freeing her sleeve. "Now the other arm. May I?" "Yes." The word scraped her throat. "Please." He moved around her with the patience of a man who had nowhere else in the world to be. Lady Endellion had spent 22 years training herself not to feel things she could not afford. She had buried her mother at 12. She had watched her father gamble away every acre by 16. She had learned to smile at men who looked at her like a horse at market. And she had learned to keep her hands steady doing it. She did not break. She did not bend. She was bending now. "You are trembling," the Duke said. "It is only the cold, Your Grace. It is June." "Then it is only me." He laughed, low and surprised, and her stomach turned over. She glanced past his shoulder, toward the hedge wall, toward the narrow gap where she knew a man was waiting in the dark with a pistol and a patient sort of hatred. The Duke was not meant to walk her out of this garden. The Duke was meant to walk her in and then fall. And then she was meant to scream the way innocent women scream and never speak of it again. She had practiced the scream in her bedroom mirror until it sounded real. "You have not told me your name," he said. "Endellion. Endellion Vance. Endellion." He repeated it the way a man tastes something rare. "I have never heard it before." "My mother chose it," she said. The common names had all been spoiled by common people. "Your mother sounds formidable." "She is dead." He went still, just for a breath. Then he reached up and freed the last thorn from the lace at her throat, and his knuckles grazed the hollow beneath her jaw. And she forgot how to be a girl who was about to murder a stranger. "Forgive me," he said quietly. "I did not mean to make light." "You did not." You have lost a great deal then. I have lost everything, Your Grace. She had not meant to say that. It came out of her like a thing escaping. The Duke looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in 3 days, she felt the trap closing on the wrong throat. He was supposed to be a cruel man. They had told her he was a cruel man. They had told her he hunted for sport and drank too deeply and ruined women for amusement. They had told her every ugly thing a person could say about another person, and she had believed it because believing it was the only way she could do what they asked. He did not look like a cruel man. He looked like a man who had been kind for so long that he no longer knew how to be anything else. "Step back now," he said, taking her uninjured hand, slowly. "The hem is caught." She stepped. The silk gave with a soft tearing sound. She stumbled, and he caught her at the waist, and for one impossible second she was held against the front of his coat, with her ear against the thudding of his heart. It was a very ordinary heart. It was beating very fast. "Lady Endellion." His voice had changed, lower, closer. "Are you quite well?" "No, Your Grace." "Tell me what is wrong." She could not. She could feel the pistol watching them from the hedge. She could feel the seconds bleeding away. The man behind the wall would wait only so long before he came looking, and when he came looking, he would not care that the Duke was being gentle with her. He would not care that the Duke had a dimple. He would put a ball through that ordinary, hurrying heart, and then he would put one through hers for good measure. Because men who hire girls to lead dukes into gardens do not leave girls alive to tell the story afterward. She had been a fool. She had been such a terrible, trusting fool. "Your Grace," she whispered, and her hand tightened on the front of his coat without her permission. "We must leave this garden. We will, as soon as you can walk. No, now, this moment." He looked down at her, and something in his face sharpened. "Endellion, what have you done?" A twig snapped behind the hedge. She closed her eyes. Twig snapped again, closer this time, and the Duke moved before Endellion could draw breath. He pulled her behind him, his body a wall of broadcloth and warm muscle between her and the hedge, and his free hand had already found the hilt of the small blade he wore at his hip. She had not even known he carried one. "Stay close to me," he said, very quiet. "Your Grace, please. Whoever is there, show yourself." Silence. Only the slow buzz of a bee working its way through the late blooms. Endellion's heart was beating so hard, she thought he must feel it through the linen of his shirt. The man in the hedge would not show himself. He was patient. He had taught her, in the candlelit drawing room, what patience meant. He had taught her by holding her brother's hand against the table and pressing the flat of a knife to the back of his wrist and saying, very softly, that bones could be made to forget how to mend. Tobiah. Her brother's name was Tobiah, and he was 19 years old, and he had their mother's pale, surprised eyes, and he had not done anything wrong except be born to a father who could not stop losing at cards. That was the thing nobody understood about ruin. It did not come for you all at once. It came in small, polite knocks at the door. It came in solicitors with damp handshakes. It came in the auction of her mother's pianoforte, her mother's lace, her mother's pearls, until there was nothing left of her mother in the house except the shape of her absence in every room. And then it came in the form of a man with cold grey eyes who knew somehow that Tobiah owed money he could not pay, and who offered Endellion a way to settle the debt without anyone losing a finger. Just a garden, he had said, just a duke, just a scream. She had said yes because she could not say no. She had said yes because the alternative was watching her brother bleed in a back alley for someone else's amusement. She had not known then that yes was a knife with two edges, Endellion. The Duke's voice came soft and close to her ear. He had not turned around. He was still watching the hedge. Whatever this is, I will get you out. You do not understand. Then explain it to me, quickly. She opened her mouth. She closed it. How did a woman tell a man, in the breath between heartbeats, that she had agreed to lead him to his own murder? How did she say the words and still be a person worth saving afterward? There is a man, she whispered, in the hedge. He has a pistol. She felt him go very still against her. And you knew this? Yes, Your Grace. He did not answer. He did not need to. She felt the answer in the way his shoulders set, the way his hand on her wrist tightened by a hair, and then deliberately gentled. He did not let her go. He did not throw her aside the way she had braced herself to be thrown. He only stood there, very quiet, with her bleeding wrist still cradled in his fingers, while a man in the dark waited to put a ball through his back. How many? He asked. One, I think. Only one. Why? My brother. What about your brother? They will kill him if I do not. He was silent for a long moment. The beef finished its slow inspection of the white, rose by her hand and moved on. Somewhere very far away, a horse whickered in a paddock. The world had not noticed yet that it was ending. Endellion, he said, look at me. She could not. Look at me. She turned her face up to him. He was not angry. That was the unbearable part. There was no fury in his eyes, no disgust, no cold ducal pride drawing itself up to its full and terrible height. There was only a quiet, attentive sorrow, as though he were reading the rest of her life off her face, and finding it harder than he had expected to bear. How long have you known him? He asked. The man in the hedge. 3 days. And before that, I had never seen him in my life. He came to you. He found you. Yes. Then he knew you would say yes. He knew what to threaten. Your Grace, please. We do not have time. We have a little. He is waiting for a signal. You were meant to give one. Her stomach dropped. How did you know? Because I am still alive. A flicker of something that might have been a smile in another life on another afternoon. He will not fire until he is certain. He cannot afford a miss. Tell me what the signal is. She could not breathe. A scream. I was to scream when you were close enough. Then we will not give him a scream. Walk with me, slowly, toward the south path. He will see us. He sees us already. What he wants is for me to turn my back. I will not turn my back. He began to move, and because his hand was still around hers, she moved with him. The garden tilted and steadied. The roses scratched at her skirts. She kept her eyes on the side of his jaw because it was the only thing in the world that felt steady. And she thought, with a clarity that frightened her, that she had never in her life walked beside a man who treated her as though she were worth protecting. That was the danger of him. That was the real danger. Not the title, not the broad shoulders, not the dimple that came and went. It was that he had heard her confess to plotting his death, and he had not let go of her hand. Your Grace, she whispered. Peregrine. My name. If we are going to die together, you ought to know it. We are not going to die. Then learn it anyway. A laugh broke out of her, small and wet, and she did not know when she had begun crying. They were nearly at the bend in the path now. The hedge was 20 paces to their left and closing. She could feel the watcher's eyes on her shoulder blades like a hand pressing down. Peregrine, she said. Yes, I am so sorry. I know. You should not be kind to me. I know that too. He stopped at the bend. He turned her gently, so that her back was to a sun-warmed stone wall, his body between her and the hedge, and he looked down at her with something fierce and tender working its way through his face. Endellion Vance, he said, listen to me very carefully. I am going to get your brother out of whatever room they are keeping him in. Do you understand? You do not even know where he is. I will know. By tonight I will know. You are going to tell me everything. The man with the grey eyes, the house, the hour you met him, everything. Why? Her voice cracked open. Why would you do that after what I have done? He looked at her for a long moment. The wind moved in the roses. Somewhere behind the hedge, a hammer cocked. Because, he said quietly, I have been waiting for you my whole life, and I am not going to lose you in the first hour. And then he pushed her down hard into the roots of the wall, and the shot rang out. The shot tore the air apart, and for one stretched, sickening heartbeat, Endellion thought it had found him. The Duke's weight came down over her, heavy and warm, and she could not tell whether he was shielding her or falling on her. Her hands flew up against his chest. She felt the rise of his ribs. He was breathing. He was still breathing. Peregrine. Stay down. A second shot cracked, but it went wide, hissing through the leaves above them, and burying itself in the stone with a sharp, ugly chip. Then there were voices, boots, men running. She could not see past the wall of his shoulder, but she heard a shout that did not belong to the man in the hedge, and then another shout that did, and then the wet, sudden sound of a body meeting the ground, then silence. The Duke did not move. He stayed over her, one hand braced beside her head, the other still wrapped around her wrist, as though letting go were a thing he had forgotten how to do. His mouth was very close to her temple. She could feel him counting. Your Grace, she whispered. A moment. Are you hurt? No, are you certain? Endellion. His voice cracked just barely. Give me a moment. She gave him the moment. She gave him as many moments as he needed. She lay beneath him in the dirt, with the broken rose stems pressing into her back, and she watched his throat work, and she understood, in a way she had not understood any other thing in her 22 years, that this man had been more afraid for her than for himself, that the count he was doing in his head was not his own heartbeats. It was hers. A boot scuffed the gravel near them. A man cleared his throat. The Duke lifted his head, slow and reluctant, and Endellion saw past his shoulder for the first time. There were 4 men in the garden who had not been there before. 2 were holding a third by the elbows. The third had a torn coat and a bloody mouth, and an expression that was not quite finished with hating her. The 4th man was older, broad in the shoulder, with grey hair cropped close, and a face like a stone wall that had weathered every winter it was given. Your Grace, said the older man. He came over the hedge from the orchard side. We have him, alive, alive. Good. The Duke pushed himself up off her with a care that made her chest ache, and then he reached down and gathered her to her feet as though she weighed nothing at all. Hartshorn, the lady is bleeding. Send to the house for water and clean linen, and have Mrs. Quill ready the green room. She will rest there. At once, Your Grace, and Hartshorn. Yes, Your Grace. Nobody questions her. Nobody speaks to her without my leave. Not the magistrate, not the constable, not my own mother. Do you hear me? The older man's eyes flicked just once to Endellion's face. There was no warmth there, but no cruelty either, only an old soldier's careful, measuring look, taking her in and filing her away. I hear you, Your Grace. Endellion's knees chose that moment to give. She did not fall. The Duke caught her before she knew she was falling, an arm around her waist, and he held her against his side as though it were the most ordinary thing in the world to hold a woman who had agreed to have him killed. "I can walk," she said. "I know. Then let me walk." "I will in a moment." He did not let her go. He walked her out of the rose garden with his arm around her waist, and his hand splayed warm against her ribs, and the men who had taken the assassins stepped aside and looked at the gravel as they passed. Nobody spoke. Endellion kept her eyes on the path, because she could not bear to look at any of them. They knew. They all knew what she had done, and they were letting her walk away on the arm of the man she had tried to kill, and the wrongness of it sat in her throat like a stone. The house rose ahead of them, pale and enormous in the afternoon light, with its long rows of windows catching the sun and throwing it back. She had not let herself look at it properly when she arrived. She had not wanted to know what she was destroying. Now she looked, and her chest hurt because it was beautiful. It was beautiful the way a place is beautiful when somebody has loved it for a long time. He led her up a side stair away from the front hall. A door opened. A woman in a white cap took one look at the blood on Endellion's sleeve and said nothing at all, only curtsied and held the door wider. The Duke walked her into a small green sitting room with a fire already laid and a couch drawn close to it, and he set her down on the couch with the kind of care a person uses for things they are afraid of breaking. He knelt in front of her. He took her wrist. He turned it gently so the worst of the cuts faced up, and he looked at it for a long moment before he spoke. "Tell me his name." "Peregrine." "His name, Endellion." She closed her eyes. "I never heard it." "He never gave it. He came to my brother's lodgings on a Tuesday night, and he had a man with him who did not speak. He had grey eyes. He had a scar at the corner of his mouth, very small, like a child's stitch. He spoke as though he had been to a good school. He knew the name of the gambling house. He knew the amount. He knew the names of the men Tobiah owes. "How much?" 6,000, she heard him breathe in. She did not open her eyes, and he offered to clear it. "Yes, in exchange for me. In exchange for a scream, Your Grace." He said the rest would take care of itself. A silence. The fire popped softly. She felt him take her other hand and turn it over, and then she felt the cool press of a damp cloth against the cut. And she realized the woman in the white cap had come and gone, and she had not heard her. "Look at me." She opened her eyes. He was very close. He had taken his coat off somewhere between the garden and the room, and his shirt was opened at the throat, and there was a smear of her blood on his collar that she would remember for the rest of her life. "Endellion." His voice had gone soft and rough at the same time. "I am going to ask you something, and I need the truth. I will not be angry. I need the truth." "Yes. Did you mean to go through with it?" She wanted to lie. She wanted to give him the kind of answer that would let him keep looking at her, the way he was looking at her now. She did not lie. "Up until the moment you knelt down in the roses, yes, I meant to. And then you touched my arm and I could not breathe." He looked at her. He looked at her for so long she thought. Perhaps he had stopped seeing her and started seeing something behind her, some old grief, some ghost. Then he lifted her hand very carefully, and he pressed his mouth to the unhurt place on the inside of her wrist where her pulse was beating, and she made a sound she did not recognize. "Peregrine, I know, you should hate me. I know that too." He set her hand back down on her lap as though it were something fragile and rare. He stood. He went to the window and stood with his back to her, and she watched the long, taut line of his shoulders and understood slowly that he was not standing there because he was angry. He was standing there because if he stayed close to her, he would do something he had not given himself permission to do. "Hartshorn will go for your brother tonight," he said to the window. "I want every detail you have, the street, the house, the hour you last saw him, whether he is kept alone, whether the grey-eyed man sleeps in the same building, whether there are servants who can be paid. You would do all this." Her voice was very small. "For me." He turned. There was something in his face she could not read. "Endellion, there is a thing I have not told you." "What thing?" "The man in the hedge, the one Hartshorn has by the elbows. I know him." Her stomach turned over. "How?" "He used to be in my employ 3 years ago, until the night my brother died." The fire popped, the room narrowed. "Your brother, my older brother, the Duke before me." His voice was level, but a muscle worked in his jaw. "Thrown from his horse on the North Road," they said. "Neck broken on a stone." I believed it for 2 years. Then I stopped believing it. "Peregrine, whoever set you on me, Endellion, did not start with you. He started a long time before you, and I think we have just been given the first piece of him we have ever held in our hands." A knock came at the door, sharp and urgent. Hartshorn's voice, low through the wood. "Your Grace, you will want to come. The prisoner is speaking, and what he is saying, Your Grace, you will not believe." The Duke crossed the room in 3 strides. He stopped with his hand on the door and looked back at her, and Endellion saw the cost of leaving her sitting there alone. He did not want to. He did not want to let her out of his sight for the breadth of a corridor. "Stay here," he said. "Please." "I am not going anywhere, Peregrine. Bolt the door behind me." "Yes." He went. She heard his boots on the stone, fast and hard, and then the sound of him taking the stairs 2 at a time. She rose. Her legs were not quite hers yet, but they held. She crossed to the door and slid the bolt home, and then she stood with her forehead against the wood and breathed. Her brother, Peregrine's brother, 2 brothers separated by 3 years and 100 miles of country, and the same cold, grey-eyed man at the centre of both ruined lives. She had thought herself a small piece in a small, ugly game. She was not. She was a piece in something old, something that had been moving its hands across a board for years before she had ever heard the click of a knife on her brother's table. She did not know how long she stood there. The fire burned lower. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed the half-hour. Then there were boots in the corridor again. Slower this time, and a knock that she knew before he spoke. "Endellion, it is me." She drew the bolt. He came in and closed the door behind him, and he did not speak for a moment. He looked older than he had an hour ago. He went to the fire and stood with his hands braced on the mantel and his head bent, and she saw the small tremor in his shoulders that he was not letting into his hands. "Peregrine, sit down, tell me." "Sit down first," she sat. He turned. He came and lowered himself onto the couch beside her, close enough that their knees touched through her skirts, and he took her uninjured hand in both of his and held it as though it were the only thing keeping him in the room. "The man in the hedge gave a name," he said. "The name of the man who pays him. The man with the grey eyes. The one who came to your brother. Who is he?" He was quiet for a long beat. "My cousin." The word landed and did not move. Her mouth opened. No sound came. "My father's sister's son. Hollis Marchant. He stood at my brother's funeral, Endellion. He carried the coffin. He wept. He held my mother's hand at the graveside and told her he would look after the estate while I was abroad. Peregrine. He has been waiting all this time. He could not inherit while I lived, and I have no son, and after me the title goes to him. He killed my brother in the road. He killed his own uncle's heir, and now he was going to kill me, and he was going to use a girl to do it, because a girl makes a clean story. A grieving lady, a duke, who fell to a poacher, a body found in the roses. Nobody would have looked further than that. He would have killed me too. Yes, he told me he would clear my brother's debt. He has never paid a debt in his life. Your brother would be dead by morning. You would be dead by the next. She was not crying. She wanted to be. The tears would not come. There was only a strange, ringing clarity in her head, as though somebody had struck a bell beside her ear and walked away. Where is Tobiah? A house in Spitalfields. Hartshorn has the street already. He rides within the hour. I am going with him. Endellion. I am going with him, Peregrine. He is my brother. He thinks I have abandoned him. He thinks I sold him. I will not have him spend another night believing that. It is not safe. Nothing about my life has been safe since I was 12 years old. He looked at her. He looked at her, and something in his face gave way, and he lifted her hand to his mouth and pressed his lips to her knuckles and held them there for a long moment, with his eyes closed. Then I am going with you, he said. No. Yes. Peregrine, if Hollis hears you have left this house tonight, he will know. He will know everything has gone wrong, and he will run, and we will never find him again. Then let him run. I will follow him to the end of the earth. Listen to me. She turned her hand in his and took hold of his fingers, and she made him look at her. You will stay. You will let the house believe the Duke is wounded. You will let word reach him that the shot found you. He will come. He will not be able to help himself. He will come to see the body, and you will be waiting for him. He stared at her. You want to use me as bait. I want to use the lie he already believes. He thinks you are dead by now. Let him think it a little longer. Let Hartshorn and I go for Tobiah, and you stay. And when Hollis walks into this house tomorrow with a mourner's face, you will be the thing that meets him at the door. Endellion. What? You have been in this for 3 days, and already you think like a woman who has been hunted her whole life. I have been, Peregrine. I just did not know who was hunting. He let out a breath that was almost a laugh, and not quite. He lifted his free hand and brushed a strand of hair back from her temple, and his fingers shook, and he did not pretend that they did not. If anything happens to you tonight, it will not. If it does, Peregrine, I have been alone in this house for 3 years. Do you understand me? 3 years of walking these corridors, knowing my brother did not fall from that horse. 3 years of being polite to a cousin I could not prove anything against. 3 years of being the last of a name, and tired, and so tired, Endellion. And then, this afternoon, a woman caught herself in my mother's roses, and I forgot how tired I was. She could not breathe. Do not die tonight, he said. That is all I am asking. Come back to this room. Come back to this couch. I will be sitting on it waiting for you. I will come back. Promise me. I promise. He kissed her then. He did not ask. He did not hesitate. He took her face in both of his hands, and he kissed her like a man who had waited his whole life to do it, and had just been told he had until morning, and she kissed him back the same way because she had. Hartshorn knocked. The horses were ready. The road to Spitalfields was longer than Endellion remembered. She had ridden it in a closed carriage 3 nights ago, with her hands knotted in her lap, and a man with grey eyes watching her from the opposite seat. She rode it now in a borrowed cloak with Hartshorn beside her on a black mare, and the streets of London at midnight were a different country. The gas lamps stuttered. The cobbles shone slick with the day's rain. Her heart sat very high in her chest, beating against her collarbone. 2 streets more, Hartshorn said quietly. When we are off the horses, my lady, you walk 1 pace behind me. Not 2, not 3, 1. Yes, if I tell you to run, you do not look back. I will not leave my brother. You will leave him to me. That is the bargain. The Duke does not get his lady back if she throws herself onto a knife in a lodging house, and I do not get to keep my position if I bring her home in a sheet. I understand you, Hartshorn. I hope you do, my lady. They tied the horses in the yard of a public house 2 streets over. Hartshorn paid the boy, who took the reins without looking at him, and then he set his hand at her elbow and walked her into the dark mouth of an alley. She had thought she knew fear. She had been wrong about that, the way she had been wrong about most things. Fear was a man's silhouette in a doorway. Fear was the smell of old smoke and river damp. Fear was the soft, deliberate click of Hartshorn easing back the hammer of the pistol he kept under his coat. The lodging house was the 3rd door from the corner. A single candle burned in an upper window. Hartshorn nodded once, very small, and then he was at the door. And the door was open, and they were inside before she had thought the word inside. A man rose from a chair at the foot of the stairs. He had a knife in his belt and a tankard in his hand. He opened his mouth. Hartshorn struck him once, hard, with the butt of the pistol. The man folded. Quietly now, Hartshorn breathed. Which room? Top of the stairs. The back. She went up the stairs ahead of him because he let her, because he understood without being told that the first face her brother saw had to be hers. The boards groaned. A baby cried somewhere below. She reached the door, and she did not knock. She turned the handle. Tobiah was sitting on the floor with his back to the wall, and his wrists tied in front of him with a length of cord. His left eye was swollen shut. There was dried blood at the corner of his mouth. He looked up when the door opened, and he made a sound that was not a word. And then he was on his knees, and then he was in her arms, and she was on the floor with him, with the cord between them and his face pressed into her shoulder. And he was crying like a child who had finally been allowed to. Endy, Endy, I thought, I know. I thought you had, I know, I would never. Tobiah, I would never. He said you had. He lies about everything. We are going home. Home where? A long way from here. Stand up. Can you stand? He could stand. He was unsteady, but he could stand. Hartshorn cut the cord with a small knife and put his shoulder under Tobiah's arm without being asked. And the 3 of them came down the stairs together. The man at the foot of the stairs had not moved. They stepped over him. They came out into the alley, and the night air hit Endellion's face, and she nearly broke. She did not break. There was no time to break. They were halfway to the horses when a voice spoke from the dark mouth of the alley behind them, calm and unhurried, and her blood turned cold. Lady Endellion, you are leaving early, she turned. Hollis Marchant stepped into the lamplight with a pistol in his hand. He was alone. He was not hurried. He was smiling, very faintly, the way a man smiles when a card has fallen the way he expected it to fall. I had thought, he said, to come and collect you at first light, but my man did not return, and a careful man learns to ask why. Where is your Duke, Lady Endellion? Why does the lady ride to Spitalfields at midnight and not the brother to a country house? Hartshorn moved her behind him so smoothly she did not feel it happen. Tobiah swayed against the wall. The pistol in Hollis's hand was level and very steady. Mr. Marchant, Hartshorn said. Hartshorn, you have aged. You have not. Step away from the lady. No, sir, I will fire. You will fire once. There are 2 of us standing. Hollis's smile thinned. His eyes flicked to Endellion. My dear, come here. No, your brother is not yet out of this alley. I can change that. No, Endellion, my name in your mouth makes me sick. He laughed low. He took a step forward. Hartshorn raised the pistol. Endellion's hand closed around the small, hard shape in her cloak pocket that the Duke had pressed into her palm at the door of the house. The thing she had not told Hartshorn about. The thing Peregrine had said, only if there is no other way. And even then, I would rather you ran. It was a small pistol, a lady's pistol. One shot, she drew it out. Hollis saw. His eyes widened, just a flicker. And then he laughed again. And it was the laugh that decided her. Because it was the laugh of a man who had never in his life believed a woman would do the thing she was holding in her hand. You will not, he said. You killed his brother. I did not. You did. You will tell him to his face. Child, I am not a child. Put the gun down, Endellion. You will hurt yourself. He took another step. Hartshorn's pistol tracked him. Tobiah made a small, broken sound against the wall, and then a fourth voice came from the far end of the alley, quiet and very, very cold, and Endellion thought she would weep from the sound of it. Hollis, drop the pistol. Peregrine stepped out of the shadow behind his cousin. He had not stayed. He had not waited on a couch in a green sitting room. He had come, the way she had known in some buried part of her that he would come, because the man who had kissed her with her blood on his collar was not a man who waited anywhere while she rode into the dark. Hollis went very still. Peregrine, drop it. You are dead. Not yet. Drop the pistol, cousin. There are 4 pistols on you and 1 on me. Arithmetic was never your strength. For a moment Endellion thought he would. For a moment Hollis's hand wavered, and his shoulders dropped, and he half turned with the weary look of a man tired of his own game. Then he moved fast. He brought the pistol up and around, not toward Peregrine, toward her, because he had understood at last what would hurt the Duke most. And Hartshorn's shot and Peregrine's shot went almost together, and Hollis Marchant fell into the wet cobbles of a Spitalfields alley without firing. He did not get up. Peregrine was across the alley before the smoke cleared. He had her face in his hands. He was saying her name. She was saying his. Tobiah was sliding down the wall and Hartshorn was catching him, and somewhere a window opened above them, and a voice shouted into the night. You came, she said. Of course I came. You said you would wait. I lied. I am sorry. I will not do it again. Peregrine, Endellion, take us home. He took them home. The sun came up over Wenmere with the slow, deliberate gold of an English summer morning, and Endellion was awake to see it. She had not slept. She did not think she would sleep for a while yet. She sat in the green sitting room with her brother on the couch beside her, a blanket over his knees and his head fallen against her shoulder. And she watched the light find the corners of the room one by one. The fire had burned down to soft red. Mrs. Quill had been in 3 times with tea. Endellion had not touched. The kettle was still warm on the hearth. Tobiah stirred against her. He did not wake. The swelling around his eye had gone purple in the night. There was a doctor coming from the village at 8. Peregrine had sent for him before he had let anybody else into the house, before he had let the magistrate cross the threshold, before he had answered a single question about the body in the Spitalfields alley. He had carried her brother up the stairs himself. She heard his step in the corridor before he came in. She knew it now. She thought she would always know it. He came in quietly. He had washed. He had changed his shirt. There were shadows under his eyes, the colour of bruises, and the smear of her blood was gone from his collar. And she found that she missed it, which was a strange and frightening thing to find herself thinking. He is sleeping, she whispered. Good. He crossed the room and lowered himself into the chair across from her. He did not reach for her. He sat with his hands loose on his knees and looked at her as though he were trying to memorize the shape of her face by the morning light. The magistrate is gone. He will return at noon. There will be questions, Endellion, many of them, but none of them tonight, and none of them for you alone. What did you tell him? The truth, as much of it as a magistrate needs, and the rest is ours. She nodded. Tobiah's breath was warm and slow against her collarbone. Outside, a blackbird had begun to sing in the lime tree by the window. Peregrine, yes, 3 years, yes, you said 3 years in this house. Alone, yes. Tell me about him, your brother. He was quiet for a long moment. She had not been sure he would answer. Then he leaned back in the chair and folded his hands together. And he began to speak in a low, even voice, as though he were reading from a book he had written in his head, and never read aloud to anybody. His name was Alaric. He was 8 years older than me. He taught me to ride. He taught me to read aloud without rushing. He had a laugh like a door slamming open. He married a girl he had loved since they were both 14, and she died in childbed the 2nd year, and he never married again. He said one love a lifetime was the bargain, and he had had his. He was kind. He was kind in a way that men are not often allowed to be. And Hollis. Hollis came to live with us when he was 12. His father had drunk himself to pieces. My father took him in. He sat at our table. He wore my brother's outgrown coats. He learned to ride on my brother's old pony. And he watched Endellion. All those years he watched, and he counted, and he hated, and we did not know. You could not have known. I could have. No, Peregrine, I should have. His voice did not rise. It went lower. There were small things, a look at the funeral, a word said too lightly, a horse that had never thrown a rider before. I let myself not see. It was easier not to see. He was family, and the house was loud with grief, and I was 24 years old, and I had just become a duke I did not want to be. And you have carried that for 3 years. I have carried it, yes. You do not carry it anymore. He looked at her. The morning light had reached the side of his face. His eyes were very tired and very awake. Endellion, I want to say something to you, and I want you to hear it as a thing I have thought about. Not a thing I am saying because the night was long and I am frightened. All right. I knelt down in the roses yesterday afternoon to help a stranger. I came up from the roses a different man. I do not know how to explain it better than that. I do not want to explain it better than that. I have been polite to a great many women in 3 years and felt nothing. And you cut your wrist on a thorn and I felt everything. And I do not think it goes away because the sun came up. Peregrine, wait, let me finish. I am not asking you for anything this morning. You have a brother to sit with. You have a life to put back together. There will be questions about your name and my name and how it came to pass that a young woman of no fortune was found in my house at midnight with a pistol in her cloak. And I will answer all of them, and I will answer them in a way that protects you. I am not asking you for an answer. I am only asking you to know. Know what? That when you are ready, whenever you are ready, a week from now, a year from now, the couch in this room is where I will be sitting. She did not trust herself to speak. She looked down at the top of her brother's dark head against her shoulder, and she thought of her mother who had named her a name nobody used. And she thought of her father at the card table with his face in his hands, and she thought of the candlelit drawing room and the cold grey eyes and the bargain she had made because she had not believed any other bargain was open to her. She thought of all the women she had been in 22 years. and she thought that none of them had ever been sat across from by a man who said, "When you are ready," instead of now. "Peregrine, yes, come here." He came. He knelt in front of the couch, careful not to jolt Tobiah, and he took her free hand in both of his and waited. "I do not need a week," she said, Endellion. "I do not need a year. I needed 22 years, and I have had them. I have been ready since you put your hand on my wrist in the rosebed, and I forgot what I was there to do. I will tell you that every morning of my life if you would like to hear it. I would like to hear it. Then you will." He bent his head over her hand. He did not kiss it. He only rested his forehead against her knuckles, and she felt the shudder go through him. The long, slow-giving way of 3 years of being alone in a house that was too big for one man. Endy. Tobiah's voice, scratchy with sleep. He did not lift his head. "Are you crying a little?" "Why? Good reasons." "Oh," a pause. "Is the Duke there?" "He is." "Is he going to look after you?" "Yes." "Good." Tobiah burrowed deeper into her shoulder. "Tell him I said good." She laughed. It was the first laugh that had come out of her in 3 days, and it was wet and it shook her, and she felt Peregrine's shoulders shaking too in the same quiet way. "He heard you," she said. "The doctor came at 8. Mrs. Quill brought fresh tea at 9. The magistrate returned at noon, and Peregrine sat with him in the library for an hour and a half, and came out tired and steady, and said it was finished, that there would be an inquest in name only, that nobody who mattered would press for more. Hartshorn had ridden out at first light to a small house in the country where Tobiah would convalesce for as long as he needed. Mrs. Quill had a niece who had nursed soldiers. It was arranged. Endellion stood at the window of the green sitting room in the late afternoon and watched Peregrine walking back from the stables with his coat slung over his arm and his head bent in thought. He looked up, he saw her, he smiled, the dimple at the left of his mouth catching the light, and she pressed her palm flat to the cold glass because she did not yet quite believe he was hers to smile at. He came up. He stood behind her. He set his chin lightly on the top of her head and put his arms around her waist. And they stood that way for a long time, watching the shadows move on the lawn. "Endellion, yes, my mother is in Bath. All right, I would like to write to her tomorrow. Not today. What will you say?" "I will say that I have found a woman with a name nobody uses, who got herself caught in her roses, and that I would like her to come home and meet you." "Will she?" "She will. She has been waiting for a long time." "For what?" "For me to come back to her. I think I have." She turned in his arms. She looked up at him. The sun was going down behind the lime trees, and the room was gold, and the blackbird was singing again, and she thought, with a clarity that no longer frightened her, that some gardens were planted to fight back a little, and some thorns drew blood for a reason, and that she would spend the rest of her life grateful for a path that had bent the wrong way on a June afternoon. "Peregrine, yes, take me out to the roses." Now, he took her out to the roses. They walked the long way, hand in hand, and the bees were quieter in the evening, and the thorns left her alone.